the new graphic edition of On Tyranny by Professor Timothy Snyder, professor of history at Yale University. His On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century has been a multi-year bestseller. The new graphic edition of On Tyranny is quite beautiful, updated. It's in bookstores as of yesterday. Professor Snyder, thank you for being here tonight.
My pleasure. Glad to be with you.
You wrote the original edition of On Tyranny in response to what you saw happen in the 2016 presidential election, helping Americans identify patterns that other countries, European countries, had gone through. You wrote in the LA Times this week that you've also observed the book inspiring protesters and resistance around the world: Hong Kong, Poland, Brazil, India, Syria. Did you know it would resonate this way around the world and not just in America?
My hopes were much narrower. I was trying to take the things that I thought I understood from the 20th century in Europe and from the dissidents in Europe who taught me, and from my contemporaries in Eastern Europe who were struggling for democracy, and remind Americans of the things that we should know. I was trying to teach us the things that we thought we knew about Nazism or communism. It's been a great honor to me to then see Europeans repeat this back to me, and then it's been a surprise, but of course also a great pleasure to see the basic message of the book be useful in places like Brazil or India or China or Hong Kong. To have student leaders from as far afield as Thailand translate the book themselves. This has been extraordinary, but it's also for me a source of hope, because it suggests that if we're facing the same problems, we might also be able to use a similar language and take similar actions.
Indeed, one of the things that you say is one of the lessons we need to learn is to make contacts in other countries, to make sure we have passports, to make sure we stay in touch with people who may have confronted some of these same problems and may have been wiser than us in the way they dealt with them. One of the things that I found myself, having gone back to the book and read it again now that it's out in this beautiful graphic edition, I realized that when I first read this work in 2017, and it meant so much to me, and we've talked about it a number of times over the years, the one place where I felt like, what he's talking about here doesn't resonate with me, I don't think we'll get there, was the message about violence. Lesson 6, be wary of paramilitaries. When the men with guns who have always claimed to be against the system start wearing uniforms and marching with torches and pictures of a leader, the end is nigh. When the pro-leader paramilitaries and the official police and military intermingle, the end has come. That was one thing that didn't resonate with me before because I couldn't picture it. But you were picturing something like what happened on January 6th.
Yeah, the last several lessons in the book are all about that. I mean, the book is meant to be a guide, starting with lesson 1, don't obey in advance, and then moving through to the end, be as courageous as you can. But it's also meant to chart a trajectory away from democracy and the rule of law towards authoritarianism and violence. And we got through those 20 steps pretty quickly. I mean, by January 6th of this year, at the very latest, we see what the alternative to democracy is. We see what mob rule looks like. And we see how that is the alternative, right? It's not that if we lose democracy, we just kind of go on with our lives. If we lose democracy, we have that kind of image, but not just one day every 4 years. That sort of thing becomes normal.
Also, the prospect that we continue to, on paper, have the same institutions that we believe are the pillars of our democracy, but they become meaningless institutions. We continue to have elections, but they have been corrupted, but they have been manipulated in such a way that they won't actually represent the will of the people, that we continue to have legislators and elected leaders who necessarily follow the authoritarian's guide, whether or not they have their own views or policy positions that might have put them at odds with it. It does feel like we're racing down that path faster than I could have thought.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think I understood from the people who I learned from, living or dead, is that undergirding all of these lessons have to be values. We're not going to be saved by a narrow legalism. We're not going to be saved by the system as it exists. We're going to be saved if we think about democracy as something which has a future, which we care about, which we love, which has all kinds of little daily components to which we all contribute. So, I mean, one thing I like about the illustrated edition is that it brings out that hopeful element of the book. It's not just about the risks we face, but it also suggests things might be much better.
Yes, exactly.